Think like a fighter. How to stay sharp, calm, and unshakable. Introduction. Why you need a fighter's mind today. Welcome to a journey that will fundamentally transform how you think, respond, and thrive in our chaotic modern world. I'm here to tell you something that might surprise you. You already have everything you need to become mentally unshakable. What you're missing isn't more willpower, more motivation, or more self-help tricks. What you're missing is the right mindset framework, the kind of mental architecture that separates champions from everyone else. Today, I want to introduce you to the fighter's mind. Not the Hollywood version, not the testosterone-fueled stereotype, but the real deal. The scientific, battle-tested mental framework that allows elite fighters to stay calm when everyone else panics, to think clearly when chaos erupts, and to perform at their peak when the stakes are highest. Chaos is the new normal. Let me paint a picture of your daily reality. You wake up to a barrage of notifications. Your phone has 17 urgent messages, your email inbox is overflowing, and before you've even had your coffee, your nervous system is already in fight or flight mode. Sound familiar? According to recent neuroscience research published in leading journals, the average person's brain processes 5 times more information today than it did in 1986. 5 times. Your great-grandfather dealt with maybe 50 decisions a day. You're making over 35,000 micro-decisions before lunch. Your brain wasn't designed for this level of cognitive assault. Here's what's happening inside your head right now. Your amygdala, that ancient alarm system in your brain, is constantly scanning for threats. But here's the problem. It can't tell the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and a passive-aggressive email from your boss. To your amygdala, they're both life-threatening emergencies that demand immediate action. This is what I call the modern mental cage fight. You're in the ring whether you know it or not, and you're fighting an opponent you can't see. The relentless assault of modern life on your attention, your peace of mind, and your ability to think clearly. But here's where it gets interesting. While most people are getting mentally pummeled by this reality, there's a group of individuals who thrive in chaos. They don't just survive it, they use it as fuel. They've learned to turn pressure into power, stress into strength, and uncertainty into opportunity. These are the mental fighters, and today you're going to learn their secrets. Modern life is a mental cage fight. Let me tell you about Sarah, an executive I work with recently. On paper, she had it all. Corner office, 6-figure salary, respect from her peers. But inside, she felt like she was drowning. Every day was a blur of meetings, deadlines, and decisions. She told me, "I feel like I'm always fighting, but I never win." Sarah's problem wasn't unique. According to Harvard Medical School research, chronic stress now affects over 70% of working adults. Our brains are stuck in a constant state of alert, like a smoke detector with a dying battery that won't stop beeping. But here's what Sarah didn't realize, and what most people don't understand. The problem isn't the chaos itself. The problem is that we're trying to fight chaos with the wrong tools. We're bringing a knife to a gunfight, mentally speaking. Think about it this way. A professional fighter doesn't hate pressure, they use it. They don't fear their opponent, they study them. They don't hope for an easy fight, they prepare for war and then dance through it like poetry in motion. This is the fighter's paradox. The very things that break most people become the raw materials for their greatness. Train your mind like a weapon. Here's something that might shock you. Your mind is the most sophisticated weapon system ever created, but like any weapon, it's only as good as its training. Most people are walking around with a Ferrari engine and bicycle brakes. They have incredible mental horsepower, but they've never learned how to harness it. Elite fighters understand something fundamental that most people miss. Mental training isn't just about positive thinking or meditation, although those have their place. It's about developing what neuroscientists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to switch between different mental modes depending on what the situation demands. Recent research from Stanford University shows that expert fighters demonstrate unique brain patterns during competition. Their prefrontal cortex, the brain's CEO, stays calm and collected while their motor cortex executes with precision. It's like having a Zen master and a samurai occupying the same body. But here's the beautiful thing. These aren't genetic gifts, these are trainable skills. The same neuroplasticity that allows your brain to form new neural pathways when you learn to play piano or speak a new language can be harnessed to develop fighter-level mental toughness. Throughout this book, we're going to train your mind like a weapon, not to hurt others, but to protect yourself from the mental chaos that's robbing you of your peace, your performance, and your potential. We're going to build mental calluses that make you tough, develop mental reflexes that keep you sharp, and create mental strategies that keep you unshakable. This isn't about becoming emotionally numb or disconnected. It's about becoming what I call calm aggressive, completely relaxed and totally ready at the same time. It's about developing the ability to think clearly when everyone else is panicking, to stay focused when everyone else is scattered, and to find opportunity when everyone else sees only problems. Chapter 1. The Fighter Mentality. Let me start with a story that changed everything for me. I was watching an MMA fight several years ago and something incredible happened. One fighter got caught in what looked like an impossible position. His opponent had him locked in a submission hold that should have ended the fight immediately. The crowd was on their feet, the commentators were calling it over, and even I was ready to look away. But this fighter didn't tap out. Instead, something shifted in his entire demeanor. His breathing stayed calm, his movements became more deliberate, and somehow, impossibly, he found a way out. Not only did he escape, but he turned the entire momentum of the fight around and won. After the fight, a reporter asked him what was going through his mind during that moment. His answer was simple, but profound. I don't think in terms of problems. I think in terms of puzzles. Every problem is just a puzzle I haven't solved yet. This, my friends, is the fighter mentality in its purest form. What makes a fighter different? What separates a fighter from everyone else isn't their physical abilities, though those matter. It's not their aggression, despite what you might think. What makes a fighter different is their relationship with adversity itself. Most people have what psychologists call an avoidance orientation. When faced with challenge, stress, or uncertainty, their default response is to get away from it as quickly as possible. This makes perfect evolutionary sense. For thousands of years, the humans who ran from danger were the ones who survived to pass on their genes. But fighters have something different. They have what researchers call an approach orientation. Instead of running from challenges, they run toward them, not because they're crazy or reckless, but because they've learned something that changes everything. The very act of moving toward a challenge transforms your relationship with it. Let me explain what happens in your brain when you shift from avoidance to approach. When you're in avoidance mode, your sympathetic nervous system floods your body with stress hormones. Your heart rate spikes, your muscles tense, and your thinking becomes narrow and reactive. You're literally in survival mode. But when you shift to approach mode, something remarkable happens. Your parasympathetic nervous system engages, your prefrontal cortex comes online, and you enter what researchers call challenge state rather than threat state. In challenge state, you still have elevated heart rate and arousal, but now it's channeled into focus and performance rather than fear and paralysis. This isn't just psychology, it's measurable neuroscience. Studies using functional MRI scans show that when people adopt an approach orientation, their brains literally rewire themselves. Neural pathways associated with curiosity, problem solving, and creative thinking become stronger, while pathways associated with fear and avoidance begin to weaken. Strength is a choice. Here's something that might challenge everything you believe about strength. Strength isn't something you're born with. It's something you choose, moment by moment, decision by decision. I know this sounds like motivational poster nonsense, but stick with me. There's real science behind this claim, and it's going to change how you think about your own capabilities. Dr. Carol Dweck's groundbreaking research at Stanford University introduced the world to the concept of growth mindset versus fixed mindset. People with a fixed mindset believe their abilities are static. You're either strong or you're not. You're either smart or you're not. You're either brave or you're not. People with a growth mindset believe abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. But here's where it gets interesting for our purposes. Fighters, by necessity, develop what I call a warrior mindset, which is growth mindset on steroids. They don't just believe they can get better, they stake their lives on it. Every training session, every sparring match, every fight is an opportunity to grow stronger, faster, smarter, tougher. Recent neuroscience research has shown that this mindset creates actual structural changes in the brain. When you consistently choose to approach challenges rather than avoid them, when you consistently choose growth over comfort, when you consistently choose strength over weakness, your brain starts building the neural infrastructure to support these choices. It's like mental weightlifting. Every time you choose courage over fear, you're doing a rep. Every time you choose to stay calm under pressure, you're building that muscle. Every time you choose to see problems as puzzles, you're strengthening that neural pathway. But here's the key. It has to be a choice. Passive strength doesn't work. You can't just hope you'll be strong when you need to be. You have to actively choose strength, practice strength, train strength, until it becomes your default response. Your mind is your first battlefield. Every external battle you face in life is won or lost first in your mind. This isn't metaphorical wisdom, it's literal truth. Your mental state determines your physical state, your emotional state, and ultimately your results in the real world. Let me tell you about Marcus, a special forces operator I worked with. Marcus told me something that stuck with me. In my line of work, we have a saying, you don't rise to the level of your expectations, you fall to the level of your training. When bullets start flying, you don't perform how you hope you will. You perform exactly how you've trained yourself to perform. This principle applies whether you're facing actual bullets or just the daily firefight of modern life. When pressure hits, when chaos erupts, when everything goes wrong, you don't suddenly become somebody different. You become exactly who you've trained yourself to be. The beautiful thing about understanding this is that it puts you in complete control. If you don't like how you respond to pressure, you can change it. If you don't like how you handle stress, you can train a different response. If you don't like how you think under pressure, you can literally rewire your brain to think differently. But it starts with winning the battle in your mind first. This is where the fighter mentality becomes practical and powerful. Fighters understand that mental preparation isn't separate from physical preparation, it's the foundation of everything else. Let me share with you the 3 pillars of mental preparation that every fighter learns. First, visualization. Elite fighters spend hours mentally rehearsing not just their techniques, but their responses to adversity. They visualize getting hurt and recovering. They visualize being behind on the scorecards and coming back. They visualize every possible scenario and train their mind to respond optimally to each one. But this isn't daydreaming or wishful thinking. This is what neuroscientists call mental rehearsal, and it creates the same neural pathways as actual physical practice. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. So when you mentally rehearse staying calm under pressure, you're literally building the neural infrastructure to stay calm under actual pressure. Second, stress inoculation. Fighters deliberately expose themselves to controlled stress so they can adapt to it. They spar with bigger, stronger opponents. They train when they're tired. They practice their techniques when they're getting hit. They're building what researchers call stress tolerance, the ability to maintain peak performance even when their nervous system is activated. Third, mental flexibility. Fighters learn to think in multiple modes simultaneously. They can be analytical and intuitive, aggressive and patient, confident and humble, all at the same time. This cognitive flexibility is what allows them to adapt to changing circumstances without losing their center. These aren't fighter-specific skills. These are human skills that fighters have simply developed to a higher level, and you can develop them too. The battlefield of your mind is where your destiny is determined. Win there first, and everything else becomes possible. Chapter 2. Calm is a superpower. I want you to imagine something for a moment. Picture the calmest person you know. Not someone who's lazy or passive, but someone who has that unshakable inner peace, even when everything around them is falling apart. Got someone in mind? Now, here's what I want you to understand. That person isn't naturally calm. Calmness isn't a personality trait you were born with. It's a skill you develop, a superpower you can train, and once you master it, it changes everything. How fighters stay cool in chaos. Let me tell you about Anderson Silva, widely considered one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time. If you've ever watched him fight, you've witnessed something that seems almost supernatural. While his opponents are swinging wildly, breathing heavily, and burning through their energy reserves, Silva moves like he's dancing. His breathing is controlled, his movements are fluid, and he has this almost otherworldly calmness about him. This isn't because Silva is naturally chill. This is because he's mastered something that separates elite performers from everyone else: the ability to remain calm while under extreme pressure. Here's what's happening from a neuroscience perspective. When most people face stress or pressure, their sympathetic nervous system kicks into overdrive. This is the fight-or-flight response that kept our ancestors alive when they faced physical threats. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing becomes shallow, stress hormones flood your system, and your thinking becomes narrow and reactive. But elite fighters have trained their nervous systems differently. They've learned to activate what researchers call the parasympathetic nervous system, even while under pressure. This is your body's rest and digest response, but when trained properly, it can coexist with high performance rather than shutting it down. Recent research from Harvard Medical School shows that people who can maintain parasympathetic activation during stressful situations demonstrate superior cognitive performance, better emotional regulation, and improved physical coordination. In other words, staying calm doesn't just feel better, it makes you perform better. But here's the key insight. This calmness isn't passive. It's not about being laid back or disconnected. It's what I call active calm, a state of relaxed readiness where you're completely present, totally aware, and ready for anything. Breathing, awareness, and response. Let me share with you the most powerful technique I know for developing this active calm. It's deceptively simple, scientifically proven, and immediately effective. It's called tactical breathing, and it's used by elite military units, emergency responders, and yes, professional fighters around the world. Here's how it works, and more importantly, why it works. The technique itself is straightforward. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, breathe out for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts. Repeat. That's it. But the science behind this simple pattern is fascinating. When you breathe in, your sympathetic nervous system activates slightly, increasing your heart rate and alertness. When you breathe out, your parasympathetic nervous system activates, decreasing your heart rate and promoting relaxation. By controlling the ratio of inhalation to exhalation, you can literally control your nervous system's response to stress. But the real magic happens when you add awareness to the equation. As you practice this breathing pattern, you begin to notice the subtle changes in your body and mind. You become aware of the exact moment when stress starts to build. You feel the first sign of tension in your shoulders, the first quickening of your heart rate, the first narrowing of your attention. This awareness is crucial because it gives you what researchers call cognitive space, the gap between stimulus and response, where choice lives. Instead of automatically reacting to stress with more stress, you now have the awareness and the tools to respond differently. Here's a practical exercise I want you to try right now. Close your eyes and think about something that's been stressing you lately. Really picture it in your mind. Notice what happens to your body. Does your breathing change? Do your muscles tense? Does your heart rate increase? Now, while holding that stressful image in your mind, begin the tactical breathing pattern. 4 in, hold 4, 4 out, 4 hold. Keep the stressful image in your mind, but don't let it control your physiology. Use your breathing to maintain calm while acknowledging the stress. This is the beginning of what I call stress immunity, the ability to remain physiologically calm even when facing psychological pressure. The pause power technique. Now let me teach you something that builds on this foundation and turns you into someone who thrives under pressure. I call it the pause power technique, and it's based on cutting-edge research in cognitive neuroscience. Here's the concept. Between every stimulus and your response, there is a space. Most people never notice the space because they react so quickly. But in this tiny gap between what happens to you and how you respond lies all your power. The pause power technique trains you to find this space and expand it. Instead of reacting immediately to whatever happens, you learn to pause, assess, and then respond optimally. The technique has 3 components. First, the physiological pause. When something stressful happens, instead of immediately reacting, you take 1 conscious breath. Just 1. This simple act engages your prefrontal cortex and gives you cognitive control over your response. Second, the mental pause. You ask yourself 1 simple question. What would be the most useful response here? Not the most satisfying, not the most emotionally authentic, but the most useful for achieving your goals. Third, the strategic pause. You consider not just your immediate response, but how this moment fits into the bigger picture of what you're trying to achieve. This might sound like it would slow you down, but research shows the opposite. People who use pause techniques actually respond faster and more effectively than people who react immediately. This is because they're not wasting time and energy on emotional reactions that don't serve them. Let me give you a real-world example. Sarah, the executive I mentioned earlier, was in a meeting where a colleague publicly criticized her project. Her immediate reaction was anger and defensiveness. She wanted to fire back and defend herself. But she had been practicing the pause power technique. So instead of reacting immediately, she took 1 conscious breath. Then she asked herself, what would be the most useful response here? Not the most satisfying, not the most emotionally authentic, but the most useful for achieving her goals. The result: instead of a confrontation, she had a productive conversation. Instead of looking defensive, she looked confident and professional. Instead of making an enemy, she turned a critic into a collaborator. This is the power of the pause. It transforms you from someone who reacts to life into someone who responds to life, and that difference changes everything. But here's what's really exciting about this technique. The more you practice it, the more automatic it becomes. You're literally rewiring your brain to default to pause and assess rather than react and regret. Neuroscientists call this response flexibility, and it's one of the strongest predictors of success in high-pressure situations. People with high response flexibility don't just perform better under pressure. They actually seem to thrive on it. Think about the implications of this for your life. What if, instead of being thrown off by unexpected challenges, you became someone who pauses, assesses, and responds optimally? What if pressure became your playground rather than your prison? This is what I mean when I say calm is a superpower. It's not about being passive or disconnected. It's about having such complete control over your responses that you can choose the optimal reaction to any situation, no matter how challenging or unexpected. The fighters who demonstrate this level of calm aren't naturally different from you. They've simply trained their nervous systems and developed their response flexibility to a higher level. And now you're going to learn to do the same. Chapter 3: Training Under Pressure. Here's something that might surprise you. Stress isn't your enemy. In fact, stress might be the most misunderstood force in your life. We've been conditioned to see stress as something to avoid, manage, or eliminate. But elite fighters know something different. They know that stress, properly understood and skillfully applied, is the raw material of excellence. Let me explain what I mean by sharing a story about how Navy SEALs are trained. During Hell Week, SEAL candidates are subjected to 5.5 days of brutal physical challenges with a total of only 4 hours of sleep. They're cold, exhausted, hungry, and pushed far beyond what they thought were their limits. But here's the fascinating part. The instructors aren't trying to break these candidates. They're trying to show them something profound about their own capabilities. They're proving that what most people think are their limits are actually just the beginning of their potential. The candidates who make it through Hell Week don't discover that they're tougher than everyone else. They discover that they're tougher than they thought they were. The stress didn't weaken them. It revealed strength they didn't know they had. How stress sharpens the mind. From a neuroscience perspective, this makes perfect sense. Stress, in optimal doses, doesn't impair performance. It enhances it. Researchers call this phenomenon hormesis, the principle that moderate stress actually makes biological systems stronger. When you expose your body to controlled physical stress through exercise, your muscles don't just recover, they grow stronger. When you expose your immune system to controlled pathogens through vaccines, it doesn't just survive, it develops immunity. And when you expose your mind to controlled pressure, it doesn't just cope, it develops resilience. The key word here is controlled. Uncontrolled, chronic stress is indeed harmful. It can lead to anxiety, depression, and a host of physical problems. But acute, controlled stress followed by recovery actually improves your capacity to handle future stress. Here's what happens in your brain when you experience optimal stress. Your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis releases hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. These aren't just stress hormones, they're performance enhancers. They sharpen your focus, heighten your awareness, and prime your body for peak performance. At the same time, your brain releases growth factors like BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, that actually promote the growth of new neural connections. In other words, challenging experiences literally make your brain more capable. Research from Stanford University shows that people who view stress as enhancing rather than debilitating show improved cognitive performance, better emotional regulation, and even better physical health outcomes. The stress itself doesn't change, but their relationship with stress transforms everything. Simulate pressure in daily life. So how do you harness this principle in your daily life? How do you train under pressure when you're not a Navy SEAL or a professional fighter? The answer is what I call stress inoculation training. Just like a vaccine exposes you to a small amount of a pathogen to build immunity, stress inoculation exposes you to small amounts of pressure to build resilience. Here's how to implement this in practical terms. First, identify your stress triggers. What situations make you feel overwhelmed, anxious, or reactive? Maybe it's public speaking, difficult conversations, tight deadlines, or social situations. Make a list of these triggers. Next, create controlled exposure to these stressors. If public speaking makes you nervous, volunteer to give presentations at work. If difficult conversations stress you out, practice having them when the stakes are lower. If deadlines pressure you, artificially create earlier deadlines for yourself. The key is to make these exposures challenging but manageable. You want to activate your stress response without overwhelming your system. Think of it like strength training. You want to lift weights that are heavy enough to stimulate growth, but not so heavy that you injure yourself. Let me give you a specific example. Tom, a client of mine, was terrified of conflict at work. Anytime someone disagreed with him or challenged his ideas, he would freeze up, become defensive, or avoid the situation entirely. This was limiting his career advancement because leadership requires the ability to navigate disagreement effectively. So we designed a stress inoculation program for him. We started small. He would deliberately express a different opinion in low-stakes situations. Maybe he'd disagree with a restaurant recommendation from a friend or express a different perspective in a casual conversation. Then we gradually increased the stakes. He started voicing disagreement in team meetings when he genuinely had a different viewpoint. He practiced asking challenging questions during presentations. He learned to stay calm and curious when others disagreed with him. What happened? Over time, his nervous system learned that disagreement wasn't dangerous. His brain rewired itself to see conflict as information rather than threat. Instead of avoiding challenging conversations, he began to seek them out because he realized they were opportunities for growth and deeper understanding. This is the power of stress inoculation training. You're not just building tolerance for pressure, you're rewiring your fundamental relationship with challenge itself. From reaction to readiness. But here's where this gets really interesting. As you practice stress inoculation training, something profound happens. You stop reacting to pressure and start responding to it. You move from a reactive state to what I call a ready state. In a reactive state, pressure triggers your fight or flight response. Your thinking becomes narrow, your emotions become intense, and your behavior becomes automatic. You're not choosing your responses, your nervous system is choosing them for you. But in a ready state, pressure activates your performance systems without overwhelming your cognitive abilities. You're alert but not anxious, focused but not tunnel-visioned, energized but not frantic. You maintain what researchers call cognitive flexibility, the ability to think creatively and adapt to changing circumstances. This ready state is what elite performers in every field learn to cultivate. It's not about being calm in the sense of being relaxed or passive. It's about being controlled, focused, and optimally aroused for peak performance. Recent research in sports psychology shows that athletes who can maintain this ready state under pressure demonstrate superior performance across multiple measures. They make better decisions, execute skills more accurately, and adapt more quickly to changing circumstances. But this isn't limited to athletics. Business leaders who maintain ready state during crises make better strategic decisions. Emergency responders who stay in ready state save more lives. Students who can access ready state during exams perform better academically. The beautiful thing is that ready state becomes your default as you practice stress inoculation training. Instead of pressure knocking you off balance, it tunes you to your optimal performance frequency. Here's a practical exercise to help you develop this ready state. Next time you're facing a challenging situation, instead of trying to eliminate the stress, try to optimize it. Ask yourself, how can I use this energy to perform better instead of how can I make this stress go away? Notice how this simple reframe changes your relationship with the pressure. Instead of seeing stress as something happening to you, you start seeing it as something you can work with. This is the fighter's approach to pressure, not to avoid it or endure it, but to dance with it, to use it, to transform it into fuel for excellence. Remember, every elite fighter started as someone who was nervous, uncertain, and overwhelmed by pressure. What changed wasn't their circumstances. What changed was their relationship with pressure itself. They learned to see stress not as a burden to bear, but as a gift to unwrap. Chapter 4. Control what you can, let go of the rest. There's a story about a samurai and a farmer that perfectly illustrates what I want to share with you in this chapter. The samurai spent his days training for battles he might never fight, preparing for enemies he might never face, worrying about outcomes he could never control. The farmer spent his days tending his crops, focusing on the soil he could improve, the seeds he could plant, the work he could do with his own hands. When drought came, the samurai raged against the sky, demanding that the rain fall according to his will. The farmer simply adjusted his methods, conserved his water, and adapted his crops to the conditions he faced. Which one do you think slept better at night? This story contains one of the most powerful principles of mental resilience ever discovered, a principle that forms the backbone of both ancient Stoic philosophy and modern cognitive behavioral therapy. It's the principle of sphere of control, and mastering it will transform your relationship with stress, anxiety, and uncertainty forever. The Stoic Warrior's Code. The ancient Stoics weren't emotionless robots, despite what popular culture might suggest. They were practical philosophers who developed perhaps the most powerful framework for mental resilience in human history. And at the center of their philosophy was a simple but profound insight. The source of human suffering isn't what happens to us, but our judgments about what happens to us. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and perhaps the most famous Stoic philosopher, wrote in his personal journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Modern neuroscience has proven this ancient insight to be literally true. Researchers have found that the brain's interpretation of events has more impact on our stress response than the events themselves. Two people can experience the exact same situation and have completely different physiological and emotional responses based solely on how they interpret what's happening. But the Stoics went beyond just understanding this principle. They developed practical techniques for applying it, techniques that are just as relevant today as they were 2,000 years ago. The foundation of Stoic practice is what they called the dichotomy of control, the ability to clearly distinguish between what is within your control and what is outside of your control. This sounds simple, but in practice, it's revolutionary. Think about what typically stresses you out. Maybe it's other people's opinions of you. Maybe it's the outcome of projects you're working on. Maybe it's economic uncertainty or political situations. Now, here's the Stoic question. How much actual control do you have over these things? The answer might surprise you. You have zero control over other people's opinions, but you have complete control over your own actions and character. You have limited control over project outcomes, but you have complete control over the effort and quality you bring to your work. You have zero control over economic or political situations, but you have complete control over how you prepare for and respond to uncertainty. Energy leaks from over-control. Here's something I've observed in working with high achievers across various fields. Most of their stress and anxiety comes not from the challenges they face, but from trying to control things that are fundamentally uncontrollable. I call this energy leak, and it's one of the biggest threats to peak performance. Every bit of mental and emotional energy you spend trying to control the uncontrollable is energy that's not available for controlling what you actually can control. Let me give you a concrete example. Michael was a successful entrepreneur who came to me because he was burning out despite working 18-hour days. He was stressed, exhausted, and despite all his effort, his business results were plateauing. As we analyzed where his energy was going, we discovered something fascinating. Michael was spending enormous amounts of mental energy worrying about things completely outside his control. Market conditions, competitor actions, customer behavior, economic trends, industry changes. Meanwhile, he was neglecting things that were entirely within his control: his own skills development, his team's training, his company's systems and processes, his personal health and energy management. It was like he was trying to steer a car by yelling at the road instead of turning the steering wheel. Once Michael learned to redirect his energy from the uncontrollable to the controllable, everything changed. Not only did his stress levels decrease dramatically, but his business results improved significantly. He was working fewer hours, but accomplishing more, because all his energy was focused on high-leverage activities. This is what I mean by energy leaks. When you try to control the uncontrollable, you're not just wasting energy, you're actually weakening your ability to control what you can control. Focus like a sniper. Elite military snipers understand something about focus that applies far beyond their specialized field. They know that accuracy isn't just about physical precision, it's about mental precision. And mental precision requires what they call selective attention. A sniper can't afford to be distracted by everything happening in their environment. They can't focus on the wind they can't control, the movements of other people they can't predict, or the outcomes they can't guarantee. Instead, they focus exclusively on what they can control: their breathing, their grip, their sight alignment, their trigger pull. This principle of selective attention is crucial for developing what I call sniper-level focus in your daily life. Instead of scattering your attention across everything that's happening around you, you learn to focus it laser-like on the specific things you can actually influence. Here's a practical exercise to develop this kind of focus. At the beginning of each day, make 2 lists. The first list contains everything you're worried about or thinking about regarding that day. Don't filter it, just brain dump everything that's on your mind. Then, go through that list and categorize each item into one of 3 categories. things I can control completely, things I can influence but not control, things I cannot control or influence at all. Now here's the key. You're only allowed to take action on items in categories 1 and 2. Everything in category 3 goes into what I call the let it be pile. This might seem obvious, but most people violate this principle constantly. They spend their days reacting to and worrying about things in category 3 while neglecting things in categories 1 and 2. Let me tell you about Lisa, a marketing director who was constantly stressed about her company's sales numbers. Sales numbers were her obsession. She checked them multiple times a day, worried about them constantly, and felt personally responsible for every up and down. But when we analyzed her actual control over sales numbers, she realized something important. Sales numbers are primarily in category 3. They're the result of many factors, most of which are outside her direct control. However, there were many things in categories 1 and 2 that directly influenced sales numbers. The quality of her marketing campaigns, the training she provided to her team, the systems and processes she implemented, the relationships she built with the sales team. When Lisa shifted her focus from the sales numbers themselves to the controllable factors that influenced sales numbers, two things happened. Her stress decreased dramatically, and her sales numbers improved significantly. This is the power of sniper-level focus. By concentrating all your energy on what you can actually control and influence, you become exponentially more effective. But there's another level to this that's even more powerful. As you practice focusing on the controllable, you begin to realize that you actually have far more control than you initially thought. The circle of what you can control and influence starts to expand. This happens because focused attention and consistent action in your area of control builds what researchers call self-efficacy, your belief in your ability to influence outcomes. And higher self-efficacy actually increases your actual ability to influence outcomes. It's a positive feedback loop. The more you focus on what you can control, the more control you actually have. The more control you exercise effectively, the more confidence you build. The more confidence you build, the more willing you are to take on bigger challenges and expand your sphere of influence. This is how fighters think about control. They don't waste energy raging against their opponent's skills, the referee's decisions, or the crowd's reactions. They focus completely on their own preparation, their own technique, their own mental state, their own game plan execution. But here's what's beautiful about this approach. By focusing entirely on what they can control, they actually maximize their influence over the things they can't directly control. A fighter who is perfectly prepared, technically sound, mentally focused, and strategically smart has maximum influence over the fight outcome, even though they can't control their opponent's actions. This is the paradox of control. The more you let go of trying to control the uncontrollable, the more actual influence you have over your results. The Stoic warriors understood this paradox 2,000 years ago. Modern neuroscience has confirmed their insights. Elite performers in every field apply these principles instinctively. Now it's your turn to master the art of control, not by grasping tighter, but by focusing sharper. Chapter 5. Mental Sparring. Win the Inner Dialogue. There's a conversation happening in your head right now. As you read these words, there's a voice providing commentary, asking questions, making judgments, maybe even arguing with what I'm telling you. This voice never stops talking. It's your constant companion, your harshest critic, and potentially your greatest ally. The question is, who's controlling this conversation? Most people have no idea that they're in a constant dialogue with themselves, let alone that they can influence the direction and tone of this dialogue. But elite fighters know something crucial. The fight in your head determines the fight in your life. Win the inner dialogue, and you win everything else. Your inner critic is not your coach. Let me tell you about the most dangerous opponent you'll ever face, your inner critic. This is the voice that tells you you're not good enough, smart enough, strong enough, or capable enough. It's the voice that magnifies your failures and minimizes your successes. It's the voice that keeps you playing small when you could be playing big. Here's what makes the inner critic so dangerous. It sounds like you. It knows all your insecurities, and it never takes a break. It's like having a hostile commentator providing negative analysis of your life 24 hours a day. But here's something that might surprise you. Your inner critic isn't trying to hurt you. In its twisted way, it's trying to protect you. It's trying to keep you safe from failure, rejection, and embarrassment by convincing you not to try in the first place. The problem is that this protection mechanism is calibrated for a world that no longer exists. Your inner critic evolved to keep you safe in a primitive environment where being rejected by the tribe meant death, and taking risks often led to becoming something's lunch. But in the modern world, this outdated protection system is sabotaging your potential. The very risks your inner critic wants you to avoid, putting yourself out there, trying new things, pushing beyond your comfort zone, are exactly what you need to do to grow and succeed. Recent research in cognitive neuroscience has revealed something fascinating about this inner voice. It originates primarily in the brain's default node network, a collection of brain regions that become active when your mind is wandering or not focused on a specific task. But here's the key insight. You can learn to redirect this inner voice. Instead of letting it run on autopilot, you can consciously shape what it says and how it says it. Dr. Ethan Kross at the University of Michigan conducted groundbreaking research on self-talk and found that people who learned to change their inner dialogue showed dramatic improvements in performance, emotional regulation, and overall well-being. They literally rewired their brains to be more supportive of their goals and aspirations. Talk to yourself like a champion. So how do you transform your inner critic into an inner champion? How do you change that negative voice into a positive, supportive, empowering one? The first step is awareness. Most people are so accustomed to their inner dialogue that they don't even notice it's happening. It's like background music that's been playing so long you've stopped hearing it. Start paying attention to what you say to yourself, especially during challenging moments. When you make a mistake, what's the first thing your inner voice says? When you're facing a difficult task, how does your internal commentary sound? When someone criticizes you, what story does your mind immediately start telling? Write down what you notice. Don't judge it or try to change it yet. Just observe it. You might be surprised by how harsh and unsupportive your inner voice actually is. Now, here's a powerful reframe. Imagine if your best friend talked to you the way you talk to yourself. Would you still be friends with that person? Probably not. So why do you accept this treatment from your own mind? The second step is intervention. When you catch your inner critic in action, consciously interrupt it. You can do this by simply saying, "Stop," out loud or in your mind. Then consciously choose a more supportive response. Instead of, "I'm so stupid for making that mistake," try, "Everyone makes mistakes. What can I learn from this one?" Instead of, "I'll never be able to do this," try, "This is challenging, but I can figure it out step by step." Instead of, "I'm not qualified for this opportunity," try, "This is a chance to grow and prove what I'm capable of." This isn't about positive thinking or denial. It's about realistic, supportive self-talk that serves your goals rather than sabotaging them. The third step is replacement. Once you've identified your common negative thought patterns and practice interrupting them, you can start proactively replacing them with what I call champion thoughts. Here's how champions talk to themselves. They focus on process rather than outcome. Instead of, "I have to win this," they think, "I'm going to execute my game plan perfectly." They focus on learning rather than judgment. Instead of, "I failed," they think, "I got valuable data about what doesn't work." They focus on growth rather than perfection. Instead of, "I should be better at this by now," they think, "I'm exactly where I need to be in my development process." They focus on possibility rather than limitation. Instead of, "This is too hard," they think, "This is exactly the kind of challenge that will make me stronger." Daily mental reps. Just like physical training, mental training requires consistent repetition. You can't just change your inner dialogue once and expect it to stick. You need to practice new thought patterns until they become automatic. This is where the concept of mental reps becomes crucial. Just like a fighter practices the same combinations over and over until they become muscle memory, you need to practice supportive self-talk until it becomes mental memory. Here's a practical system for building this habit. Morning mental training. Start each day with 5 minutes of intentional, positive self-talk. Look at yourself in the mirror and speak to yourself like a champion would. Remind yourself of your strengths, your goals, and your capabilities. This isn't about false confidence, it's about priming your mind for peak performance. Mistake recovery protocol. Develop a standard response for when you make mistakes or face setbacks. Instead of automatically going into self-criticism mode, have a prepared response. Interesting data. What can I learn from this? How can I improve next time? Challenge reframing. When facing difficult tasks or situations, practice reframing them as opportunities rather than threats. "This is going to be tough" becomes, "This is going to make me stronger." "I don't know if I can do this" becomes, "I'm about to find out what I'm capable of." Evening review. End each day by consciously acknowledging what you did well, what you learned, and what you're grateful for. This prevents your mind from defaulting to rumination and worry. Let me share a story about the power of this approach. Jennifer was a sales manager who was struggling with confidence issues. Despite being knowledgeable and skilled, she would psych herself out before important presentations and client meetings. We discovered that her inner dialogue before these high-stakes situations was incredibly negative. They're going to ask questions I can't answer. They'll probably think I'm too young. I'm going to mess this up like last time. We worked together to develop a new pre-performance mental routine. Instead of allowing her mind to spiral into worst-case scenarios, she learned to consciously direct her inner dialogue. I'm prepared and knowledgeable. I have valuable solutions for their problems. Even if I don't know something, I can be honest and follow up. This is an opportunity to help them succeed. The results were dramatic. Not only did her confidence improve significantly, but her actual performance improved as well. Her closing rate increased by over 30% in just 3 months. This is the power of winning the inner dialogue. Your external performance is limited by your internal conversation. Change the conversation, change the results. But here's what's really exciting about this process. As you practice positive self-talk, you literally rewire your brain. Neuroscientists have found that consistent positive self-talk strengthens neural pathways associated with confidence, resilience, and peak performance, while weakening pathways associated with self-doubt and anxiety. You can actually train your brain to default to supportive, empowering thoughts rather than critical, limiting ones. Remember, every champion started with the same inner critic that you have. What made them champions wasn't the absence of doubt. It was their ability to transform that doubt into determination, that criticism into motivation, that inner dialogue into inner strength. The fight in your head never ends, but you can choose who wins. And when you consistently choose empowering thoughts over limiting thoughts, when you consistently choose growth over protection, when you consistently choose possibility over limitation, you don't just change your inner dialogue, you change your life. Chapter 6. Discipline over emotion. Let me tell you about the most important fight you'll ever have. It's not against an external opponent. It's not against difficult circumstances or challenging people. The most important fight you'll ever have is the daily battle between who you are in the moment and who you've decided to become. This is the fight between discipline and emotion, between your higher self and your lower impulses, between the person you want to be and the person you default to being when things get difficult. Most people lose this fight every single day. They wake up with good intentions, but by the time they face their first real challenge, their emotions take over and their discipline crumbles. They react instead of respond. They give in instead of push through. They settle instead of strive. But fighters understand something profound. Discipline isn't about motivation or willpower. It's about identity. It's about deciding who you are and then proving it to yourself through your actions, especially when you don't feel like it. Don't wait to feel right. Act right. Here's one of the biggest lies we tell ourselves. I'll do it when I feel motivated. I'll start exercising when I feel energetic. I'll have that difficult conversation when I feel confident. I'll pursue that goal when I feel ready. This is backwards thinking, and it keeps people stuck in mediocrity forever. The truth is exactly the opposite. You don't act because you feel motivated. You feel motivated because you act. Neuroscience research has revealed something fascinating about the relationship between emotions and actions. We used to think that emotions caused actions, that you felt happy and then smiled, or felt confident and then took action. But brain imaging studies show that the relationship often works in reverse. Actions can cause emotions. When you smile, even if you don't feel happy, your brain releases endorphins that actually make you feel happier. When you stand in a confident posture, even if you don't feel confident, your body produces hormones that increase your actual confidence levels. When you take action toward a goal, even if you don't feel motivated, your brain releases dopamine that increases your motivation to continue. This is called embodied cognition, and it means you can literally act your way into feeling different. You don't have to wait for motivation to strike. You can create motivation through action. Elite fighters apply this principle intuitively. They don't train because they feel like training. They train whether they feel like it or not, and the act of training creates the energy and motivation to train harder. But this goes deeper than just motivation. This is about identity formation. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. When you choose discipline over emotion, you're voting for the identity of a disciplined person. When you choose growth over comfort, you're voting for the identity of someone who grows. When you choose courage over fear, you're voting for the identity of a courageous person. Here's a practical way to apply this. Instead of asking yourself, do I feel like doing this? Ask yourself, what would the person I want to become do in this situation? Then do that, regardless of how you feel in the moment. From lazy impulses to sharp instincts. Let's talk about impulses. Everyone has them. Those immediate urges to take the easy path, avoid discomfort, seek pleasure, or escape challenge. These impulses aren't evil or wrong. They're evolutionary survival mechanisms that helped our ancestors conserve energy and avoid danger. But in the modern world, following every impulse leads to what I call soft living, a life of constant comfort seeking that ultimately leads to weakness, dissatisfaction, and unfulfilled potential. Fighters learn to transform these lazy impulses into sharp instincts through a process I call impulse transformation. Instead of suppressing or fighting against their impulses, they redirect them toward productive action. Here's how it works. First, recognize the impulse without judgment. When you feel the urge to avoid a difficult task, procrastinate, or take the easy way out, don't hate yourself for it. Acknowledge it. I notice I'm having the impulse to avoid this challenge. Second, trace the impulse to its source. Usually, impulses are triggered by some form of discomfort: physical discomfort, emotional discomfort, or mental discomfort. Ask yourself, what discomfort is this impulse trying to avoid? Third, reframe the discomfort as information. Discomfort isn't a stop sign, it's a navigation system. It's telling you that you're at the edge of your comfort zone, which is exactly where growth happens. Fourth, use the energy of the impulse to fuel productive action. Instead of avoiding the discomfort, lean into it. The same energy that was driving you away from challenge can be redirected to drive you toward it. Let me give you an example. Mark was a software developer who had a dream of starting his own business, but every time he sat down to work on his business plan, he would feel overwhelmed by the complexity of the task and would end up scrolling social media feeling guilty about not working on his real goals. We analyzed his impulse pattern. He would open his laptop to work on the business plan, immediately feel overwhelmed by the complexity of the task, have the impulse to do something easier and more immediately gratifying, and then spend hours on social media feeling guilty about not working on his real goals. Instead of trying to write the entire business plan at once, he would commit to writing just one paragraph. Instead of trying to solve all the problems at once, he would focus on answering just one question. The key was using the energy of the avoidance impulse to fuel approach behavior. Within 6 months, Mark had completed his business plan and secured funding for his startup. The same impulses that were previously sabotaging him became the fuel for his success. Self-control equals self-respect. Here's something that might change how you think about discipline forever. Self-control isn't about restriction or limitation. It's about respect, specifically self-respect. When you consistently choose your long-term goals over your short-term impulses, you're showing respect for your future self. When you do what you said you would do, even when you don't feel like it, you're showing respect for your word. When you push through discomfort to achieve something meaningful, you're showing respect for your potential. And here's what happens when you consistently demonstrate self-respect through self-control. You start to believe in yourself at a deeper level. You develop what psychologists call self-efficacy, the belief that you can accomplish what you set out to accomplish. This isn't just psychology, it's measurable neuroscience. Brain imaging studies show that people with higher self-control have stronger connections between their prefrontal cortex, the brain's CEO, and their limbic system, the brain's emotional center. They've literally built stronger neural pathways for rational decision-making. But here's the beautiful thing. These neural pathways can be strengthened through practice. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, you're building what researchers call cognitive control, your brain's ability to override automatic responses and choose deliberate actions. This is why fighters train so intensely, not just for physical conditioning, but for mental conditioning. Every rep they do when they don't feel like it, every round they push through when they're tired, every technique they practice when they're bored, all of these are building their cognitive control muscles. Here's a practical system for building this self-respect through self-control. Start small. Don't try to overhaul your entire life at once. Pick one small area where you can consistently choose discipline over impulse. Maybe it's making your bed every morning, or doing 10 push-ups before coffee, or reading for 15 minutes before checking your phone. Stack habits. Once you've established one small disciplined behavior, add another one to it. If you're successfully making your bed every morning, add a 2-minute meditation right after. If you're consistently doing push-ups, add a healthy breakfast afterward. Track your wins. Keep a simple record of your disciplined choices. This isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Celebrate each time you choose your higher self over your lower impulses. Learn from lapses. When you slip up, and you will, don't waste time on guilt or self-recrimination. Analyze what happened, learn from it, and get back to your disciplined behavior as quickly as possible. The goal isn't to become a robot who never feels impulses or emotions. The goal is to become someone who feels everything but is controlled by nothing. Someone who can acknowledge their impulses and emotions without being enslaved by them. This is what I mean when I say that self-control equals self-respect. Every disciplined choice is you saying to yourself, I believe in my goals more than I believe in my momentary feelings. I respect my future self more than I serve my present impulses. I am someone who does what I say I will do. And when you consistently send yourself this message through your actions, something powerful happens. You start to believe it. You develop unshakable confidence not because you think you're perfect, but because you know you're reliable. You know that when things get tough, you can count on yourself to do what needs to be done. Chapter 7. Embrace discomfort like a fighter. I want to tell you about the most counterintuitive secret of peak performance. The people who achieve the most are the ones who have learned to be comfortable being uncomfortable. While everyone else is running from discomfort, elite performers are running toward it. While others see pain as a problem to solve, champions see it as information to use. This isn't masochism or toughness for its own sake. This is strategic discomfort, the intelligent use of temporary pain to create permanent gain. Pain is not the enemy. Let me start by challenging something you've probably believed your entire life. Pain is not your enemy. In fact, pain might be one of your most valuable allies, if you learn to interpret it correctly. We live in a culture that treats all discomfort as something to be avoided, eliminated, or medicated away. We have apps to avoid traffic, pills to avoid headaches, and countless products designed to make life as frictionless as possible. But here's what this comfort-seeking culture doesn't understand. Pain is information, and information is power. When a fighter gets hit, they don't just feel pain, they gather intelligence. The pain tells them about their opponent's timing, power, and strategy. It tells them about gaps in their own defense and opportunities for counterattack. Instead of being devastated by the pain, they use it to become more dangerous. From a neurological perspective, this makes perfect sense. Pain is one of your body's most sophisticated communication systems. It's how your nervous system alerts you to important information about your environment and your performance. When you're exercising and your muscles start to burn, that pain isn't telling you to stop. It's telling you that you're in the zone where adaptation happens. When you're learning a new skill and you feel the frustration of not getting it right, that discomfort isn't telling you to quit, it's telling you that your brain is forming new neural pathways. Research from Stanford University shows that people who reframe pain as information rather than as something to be avoided demonstrate superior performance across a wide range of activities. They don't experience less pain, they interpret it differently, and that interpretation changes everything. How champions use suffering to evolve. Elite athletes across all sports share a common characteristic. They've learned to find meaning in suffering. They don't suffer just to suffer. They suffer strategically, with purpose, toward a goal that makes the temporary pain worthwhile. This is what psychologists call eustress, positive stress that promotes growth and adaptation. Unlike distress, which is harmful and debilitating, eustress is challenging but manageable, and it leads to increased capability and resilience. Here's how champions think about discomfort. They see it as temporary. Champions understand that all discomfort is temporary. The pain of training ends, the exhaustion of competition passes, the frustration of learning something new eventually gives way to mastery. This perspective allows them to endure present discomfort for future benefit. They see it as purposeful. Every bit of discomfort in a champion's life serves a purpose. It's not random suffering. It's strategic challenge designed to build specific capabilities. This sense of purpose transforms suffering from meaningless pain into meaningful growth. They see it as voluntary. Champions choose their discomfort rather than having it imposed on them. This sense of agency is crucial because voluntary discomfort builds resilience, while involuntary suffering often breaks it down. They see it as information. Instead of trying to ignore or suppress discomfort, champions listen to it. They use it as feedback about their current limits and as guidance for their training and development. Let me share a story about David Goggins, one of the most mentally tough individuals on the planet. Goggins went from being an overweight exterminator to becoming a Navy SEAL, Army Ranger, and ultra-marathon runner. His transformation wasn't based on natural talent or favorable circumstances. It was based on his willingness to embrace extreme discomfort as a tool for growth. Goggins has a concept he calls the 40% rule, the idea that when your mind is telling you you're done, you're actually only operating at about 40% of your actual capacity. The remaining 60% can only be accessed by pushing through the discomfort that most people use as a signal to stop. This isn't just motivational theory. It's supported by exercise physiology research. Studies show that mental fatigue occurs long before physical fatigue, and that people who learn to push through psychological barriers can access significantly more of their physical capabilities. Toughness training for the modern mind. So how do you apply these principles if you're not training to become a Navy SEAL or professional fighter? How do you use strategic discomfort to build mental toughness in everyday life? The answer is what I call toughness training, the systematic exposure to manageable discomfort for the purpose of building resilience and expanding your capabilities. Here's how to implement toughness training. Physical toughness training. Regularly engage in activities that challenge your physical comfort zone. This could be cold showers, intense workouts, fasting, or any activity that requires you to push through physical discomfort. The goal isn't to punish yourself, it's to prove to yourself that you can be uncomfortable and still function effectively. Mental toughness training. Deliberately engage in cognitively challenging activities when you'd rather do something easy. This could be learning a difficult skill, solving complex problems, or engaging in deep work when you feel like checking social media. The key is choosing difficulty over ease. Emotional toughness training. Practice staying present with difficult emotions instead of immediately trying to escape them. When you feel anxious, sad, or frustrated, sit with those feelings for a few minutes before taking action to change them. This builds your tolerance for emotional discomfort. Social toughness training. Regularly put yourself in social situations that stretch your comfort zone. This could be public speaking, having difficult conversations, or expressing unpopular opinions when appropriate. The goal is to build confidence in your ability to handle social pressure. Let me give you a practical example of how this works. Rachel was a marketing executive who wanted to start her own consulting business, but was paralyzed by the fear of rejection and failure. We designed a toughness training program specifically for her situation. Physical component. Rachel started taking cold showers every morning. This wasn't about the cold showers themselves, it was about proving to herself that she could do something uncomfortable every day. Each cold shower was a victory that built her confidence in her ability to push through discomfort. Mental component. Rachel committed to spending 1 hour each day working on her business plan, even when she felt overwhelmed or uncertain. Instead of waiting until she felt ready or inspired, she trained herself to work productively while feeling uncomfortable. Emotional component. When Rachel felt fear or anxiety about starting her business, instead of trying to suppress these feelings, she learned to acknowledge them and continue working anyway. She developed what she called scared and doing it anyway as her operating mode. Social component. Rachel started reaching out to potential clients and mentors even though she felt nervous about it. Each conversation was an opportunity to build her tolerance for the discomfort of putting herself out there. The results were remarkable. Within 6 months, Rachel had not only started her consulting business, but had signed 3 major clients. More importantly, her relationship with discomfort had completely transformed. Instead of seeing uncomfortable feelings as stop signs, she now saw them as signals that she was growing. This is the power of toughness training. You're not trying to eliminate discomfort from your life, you're building your capacity to perform effectively while experiencing discomfort. Here's a crucial distinction. Toughness training isn't about being reckless or ignoring genuine warning signals. It's about distinguishing between discomfort that signals danger, which you should heed, and discomfort that signals growth, which you should embrace. The discomfort of touching a hot stove is protective. It's keeping you from injury. The discomfort of learning a new skill is productive. It's signaling that your brain is adapting and growing. Learning to tell the difference is a crucial part of developing mental toughness. Remember, every champion in every field has had to learn to dance with discomfort. They haven't eliminated it from their lives. They've learned to use it as a tool for becoming stronger, smarter, and more capable. The question isn't whether you'll experience discomfort in your life. You will. The question is whether you'll use that discomfort to become tougher or let it make you weaker. Champions choose to become tougher, and now you can too. Chapter 8. Building Unshakable Focus. In a world designed to destroy your attention, focus has become a superpower. While everyone around you is scattered, distracted, and mentally fragmented, the ability to direct your mental energy with laser-like precision toward your most important goals gives you an almost unfair advantage. But here's what most people don't understand about focus. It's not about concentration techniques or productivity hacks. True focus, the kind that creates extraordinary results, is about identity. It's about becoming the type of person who naturally eliminates distractions and pursues what matters most with relentless intensity. Eliminate distractions like a professional. Let me tell you about the most expensive real estate in the world. It's not in Manhattan or Silicon Valley. It's the space between your ears. Your attention is literally the most valuable resource you possess, and companies are spending billions of dollars trying to steal it from you. Every app on your phone, every notification on your computer, every advertisement you see has been designed by teams of neuroscientists and behavioral psychologists with one goal: to capture and monetize your attention. They're not just competing with each other for your attention, they're competing with your dreams, your goals, and your potential. Here's the harsh reality. If you're not intentionally managing your attention, someone else is managing it for you, and they're not managing it in your best interest. Here's how to apply environmental design to your life. Digital environment. Your devices should serve your goals, not sabotage them. Delete apps that don't add value to your life. Turn off non-essential notifications. Use website blockers during focused work time. Make your phone less appealing by switching it to grayscale mode. Physical environment. Your physical space should promote the behaviors you want and discourage the behaviors you don't want. If you want to read more, put books in easily accessible places and hide the TV remote. If you want to exercise, lay out your workout clothes the night before. Social environment. The people you spend time with influence your ability to focus. Surround yourself with people who support your goals and minimize time with people who encourage distracted, unfocused behavior. Temporal environment. Protect your peak energy hours for your most important work. Don't waste your best mental energy on email, social media, or other low-value activities. Create a fighter's focus ritual. Elite fighters don't just show up and hope they'll be focused. They have specific rituals that shift their minds from scattered to laser-focused. These rituals serve as bridges between their everyday consciousness and their peak performance state. Here's what a fighter's focus ritual typically includes. Physical preparation. Fighters use movement and breathing to shift their physiology into an optimal state. This might include specific warm-up routines, breathing exercises, or physical movements that signal to their bodies and minds that it's time to perform. Mental preparation. They use visualization, affirmations, or other mental techniques to prime their minds for peak performance. They're not just hoping they'll perform well, they're mentally rehearsing optimal performance. Environmental preparation. They create a specific physical environment that supports focus. This might include particular music, lighting, temperature, or other environmental factors that signal focus time. Temporal preparation. They allocate specific time blocks for focused work and protect these blocks as sacred. They don't allow meetings, calls, or other distractions during these periods. Let me share how this works in practice. Tom was a software architect who was struggling to find deep focus time for his most important projects. He was constantly interrupted by meetings, emails, and colleagues, and he felt like he was always playing catch-up rather than doing his best work. We worked together to create a focus ritual inspired by fighter preparation techniques. Physical preparation. Tom started each focused work session with 5 minutes of deep breathing and light stretching. This simple routine signaled to his body and mind that it was time to transition from scattered activity to concentrated work. Mental preparation. Before diving into complex tasks, Tom would spend 2 minutes visualizing himself working with complete focus and successfully solving the problems he was facing. This mental rehearsal primed his brain for optimal performance. Environmental preparation. Tom created a specific workspace setup for deep work: noise-canceling headphones, specific lighting, a clean desk, and his phone in another room. When he sat down in this environment, his brain knew it was focus time. Temporal preparation. Tom blocked out 2 90-minute periods each day for his most important work. During these blocks, he was completely unavailable. No emails, no meetings, no interruptions of any kind. The results were dramatic. Tom's productivity on his most important projects increased by over 200%, and the quality of his work improved significantly. More importantly, he felt more satisfied and energized because he was finally doing his best thinking rather than just reacting to other people's priorities. Laser mentality in daily life. But focus isn't just about work productivity. The ability to direct your attention with precision affects every area of your life: your relationships, your health, your personal growth, your overall satisfaction and fulfillment. Most people live their lives in what I call scatter mode, constantly jumping from one thing to another, never fully present with any activity, always partially distracted by something else. This scattered attention creates a scattered life. Fighters, on the other hand, develop what I call laser mentality, the ability to be completely present with whatever they're doing, whether it's training, competing, or even resting. Here's how to develop laser mentality in your daily life. Single tasking mastery. Despite what our culture tells us, multitasking is a myth. Your brain can't actually focus on multiple things simultaneously. It can only switch rapidly between different tasks, which reduces the quality of attention you give to each one. Practice doing one thing at a time with complete attention. Presence practice. Whatever you're doing, practice being completely present with that activity. If you're eating, focus entirely on the taste, texture, and experience of eating. If you're talking with someone, give them your complete attention without thinking about what you'll say next. Attention training. Like any skill, attention can be strengthened through practice. Meditation is one of the most effective ways to train your attention, but you can also practice focused attention through activities like reading, playing music, or any activity that requires sustained concentration. Priority clarity. Most people struggle with focus because they're not clear about what's most important. When everything feels urgent, nothing gets your best attention. Regularly clarify your priorities and let this clarity guide where you direct your focus. Let me tell you about Maria, a working mother of two who felt like she was constantly scattered and never fully present with any part of her life. She was trying to be everything to everyone and felt like she was failing at everything. We worked on developing her laser mentality. At work, instead of constantly checking email throughout the day, Maria designated specific times for email and gave her complete attention to her primary projects during protected focus blocks. With her children, when she was with her kids, she practiced being completely present. No phone, no mental to-do list, just complete attention to their conversations and activities. For herself, Maria protected time for activities that recharged her, exercise, reading, or simply sitting quietly, and during these times she practiced single-pointed attention rather than letting her mind race through her responsibilities. The transformation was remarkable. Maria's work performance improved because she was giving focused attention to her most important tasks. Her relationship with her children deepened because they felt her complete presence when she was with them, and her stress levels decreased because she was no longer trying to split her attention in impossible ways. This is the power of laser mentality. It's not about doing more things. It's about doing fewer things with complete attention and excellence. Remember, in a world full of distractions, your ability to focus deeply is not just a nice skill to have. It's your competitive advantage. While everyone else is skimming the surface of their potential, you'll be diving deep into yours. The fighters who achieve greatness aren't the ones with the most natural talent. They're the ones who can focus that talent like a laser beam toward continuous improvement and peak performance. Now you know how to do the same. Chapter 9. Resilience. Bounce back, not break. There's a Japanese art called kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold. Instead of hiding the breaks, the gold highlights them, making the repaired piece more beautiful and valuable than it was before it was broken. The philosophy behind kintsugi is profound. Breakage and repair are part of the object's history, not something to disguise. This is the perfect metaphor for true resilience. Resilience isn't about being so strong that you never break. It's about breaking and coming back stronger, with your scars transformed into sources of strength and wisdom. Every champion you've ever admired has been broken at some point. Every success story includes chapters of failure, setbacks, and defeat. What separates champions from everyone else isn't the absence of adversity, it's their response to adversity. You will fall. Now what? Let me start with the truth that nobody wants to hear, but everyone needs to understand. You will fail. You will face setbacks. You will experience defeats that feel devastating. You will have moments when you question everything you believe about yourself and your capabilities. This isn't pessimism, this is realism. Failure isn't a possibility in a meaningful life, it's a certainty. The question isn't whether you'll face adversity. The question is what you'll do when adversity faces you. Most people approach life trying to avoid failure, which is like trying to learn to swim without ever getting wet. They play it safe, stay in their comfort zones, and minimize risk. But by trying to avoid failure, they also avoid growth, achievement, and the satisfaction of testing their limits. Fighters have a completely different relationship with failure. They don't see failure as something to avoid, they see it as information to use. Every loss teaches them something about their strengths, weaknesses, and areas for improvement. Every setback reveals something about their character and resilience. This isn't just philosophy. It's supported by cutting-edge research in neuroscience and psychology. Studies show that people who experience moderate amounts of adversity actually develop greater resilience and life satisfaction than people who experience either no adversity or overwhelming adversity. Researchers call this post-traumatic growth, the positive psychological change that can result from struggling with highly challenging circumstances. People who learn to bounce back from adversity often develop increased appreciation for life, deeper relationships, greater personal strength, and a clearer sense of priorities and meaning. But here's the key. Post-traumatic growth doesn't happen automatically. It requires a specific mindset and set of practices that transform adversity into something that weakens you, into something that strengthens you. Psychological comebacks. The most inspiring stories in sports aren't about athletes who never lost. They're about athletes who lost and came back stronger. Muhammad Ali lost his prime fighting years to a political stand and came back to reclaim his championship. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team and used that rejection as fuel to become the greatest player of all time. These comebacks weren't just physical, they were psychological. These athletes had to rebuild not just their skills, but their confidence, their identity, and their belief in their ability to succeed. Here's what I've learned from studying psychological comebacks. Resilience isn't a trait you're born with, it's a skill you develop. And like any skill, it can be broken down into specific components that can be practiced and improved. The first component is cognitive flexibility, the ability to reframe setbacks in ways that serve your growth rather than undermine your confidence. Instead of seeing failure as evidence that you're not good enough, you learn to see it as evidence that you're pushing your limits and growing. The second component is emotional regulation, the ability to feel the full impact of disappointment, frustration, or pain without being overwhelmed by these emotions. You don't suppress or deny difficult emotions, you feel them fully and then choose how to respond. The third component is behavioral adaptation, the ability to change your approach based on what you've learned from setbacks. Instead of stubbornly repeating failed strategies, you analyze what didn't work and adjust your methods accordingly. The fourth component is meaning-making, the ability to find purpose and significance in your struggles. You don't just endure adversity, you transform it into a source of strength, wisdom, and motivation. Let me share the story of Sarah, an entrepreneur whose first business failed spectacularly, leaving her financially devastated and emotionally crushed. For months, she was consumed by shame, self-doubt, and regret. She questioned her judgment, her capabilities, and her decision to become an entrepreneur in the first place. But gradually, Sarah began to apply the principles of psychological comeback. Cognitive flexibility. Instead of seeing her failure as proof that she wasn't meant to be an entrepreneur, she reframed it as expensive but valuable education. She made a list of everything she learned from the experience and realized that this knowledge made her more qualified, not less qualified, for future success. Emotional regulation. Sarah allowed herself to fully feel the disappointment and pain of her failure without trying to minimize or escape these emotions. She grieved the loss of her dream, acknowledged her mistakes, and gradually began to separate her identity from her temporary circumstances. Behavioral adaptation. Sarah analyzed every aspect of her failed business and identified specific areas where she could improve. She sought mentorship, developed new skills, and created better systems for future ventures. Meaning-making. Sarah began to see her failure as preparation for helping other entrepreneurs avoid similar mistakes. She started speaking at events about entrepreneurial resilience and found deep purpose in supporting others through their challenges. 2 years later, Sarah launched a new business that became wildly successful. But more importantly, she had transformed from someone who was devastated by failure into someone who was strengthened by it. Adapting like a fighter in the final round. In boxing, the final round often determines the winner. This is when fatigue is highest, when accumulated damage is most apparent, and when the temptation to quit is strongest. But champions know something crucial about final rounds. This is when the fight is really won or lost. The fighters who excel in final rounds aren't necessarily the most naturally talented or physically gifted. They're the ones who have developed the ability to adapt, to find new sources of energy when their first sources are depleted, and to discover ways to win even when their original game plan isn't working. This final round mentality is crucial for resilience in life. There will be times when you're exhausted, when your original plans aren't working, when you've taken more hits than you expected. These are your final round moments, and how you respond to them will determine the outcome of your entire fight. Here's how to develop final round resilience. Expect the unexpected. Champions don't hope that everything will go according to plan. They prepare for when it doesn't. They develop contingency plans, alternative strategies, and the mental flexibility to adapt when circumstances change. Find new sources of energy. When your primary motivation is depleted, you need to tap into deeper sources of drive. This might be your commitment to people you care about, your desire to prove something to yourself, or your vision of who you want to become. Focus on process, not outcome. In the final round, focusing on winning can be overwhelming. Instead, focus on executing your skills, staying present, and doing your best in each moment. The outcome will take care of itself if you take care of the process. Use adversity as fuel. Instead of being weakened by the challenges you face, use them as sources of motivation. Every obstacle is an opportunity to prove your resilience. Every setback is a chance to demonstrate your comeback ability. Remember your why. When everything else fails, reconnect with your deepest reasons for pursuing your goals. Champions fight not just for themselves, but for something larger than themselves, their families, their communities, their legacy. The most resilient people I know aren't the ones who've never been knocked down. They're the ones who've learned to get up, dust themselves off, learn from what happened, and come back stronger than before. This is the fighter's approach to resilience. Not avoiding the fight, not pretending it doesn't hurt when you get hit, but developing the skill and confidence to know that no matter what happens, you can handle it, learn from it, and use it to become better. Your scars tell the story of your strength. Your comeback defines your character. Your resilience determines your destiny. In the final round of your life, when you look back at all you've overcome, all you've achieved, and all you've become, you'll realize that your greatest victories weren't the ones that came easy. They were the ones that required you to reach deeper, fight harder, and discover strength you didn't know you had. Chapter 10: The Fighter's Daily Code. Everything we've talked about in this book comes down to one thing: what you do every single day. All the philosophy, all the psychology, all the inspiration in the world means nothing if it doesn't translate into daily practice. Champions aren't made in moments of glory. They're made in moments of discipline, when nobody is watching, when the work is hard, and when the results seem far away. They're made in the 1,000 small choices that accumulate over time into extraordinary outcomes. This is what I call the fighter's daily code. A systematic approach to living that turns peak performance from an occasional occurrence into a consistent way of being. Discipline routines for mental strength. Let me tell you something that changed my entire perspective on discipline. Discipline isn't about willpower. Willpower is finite. It gets depleted throughout the day and varies based on your energy levels, mood, and circumstances. Relying on willpower alone is like trying to build a skyscraper on quicksand. True discipline is about systems, routines, and habits that make the right choices automatic. It's about creating what researchers call behavioral architecture, structures that support the behaviors you want and make the behaviors you don't want more difficult. Elite fighters understand this intuitively. They don't wake up each morning and decide whether they feel like training. They have systems that make training inevitable. They don't rely on motivation to eat properly, sleep well, or stay focused. They have routines that automate these behaviors. Here's how to build discipline routines that create mental strength. Morning routine. How you start your day sets the tone for everything that follows. Champions have morning routines that prime them for peak performance. This isn't about copying someone else's routine. It's about designing a routine that works for your life and goals. A powerful morning routine might include hydration. Start with water to rehydrate your body after sleep. Movement, some form of physical activity to activate your body and mind. Mindfulness, meditation, breathing exercises, or quiet reflection. Learning, reading, listening to podcasts, or other forms of growth. Planning, reviewing your priorities and intentions for the day. The key is consistency. Your morning routine should be sustainable and non-negotiable. Start small, maybe just 10 minutes, and build from there. Evening routine. How you end your day is just as important as how you start it. Your evening routine should help you recover from the day's challenges and prepare for optimal performance tomorrow. An effective evening routine might include review, reflecting on what went well and what you learned. Gratitude, acknowledging what you're thankful for from the day. Preparation, setting up for tomorrow's success. Disconnection, separating from work and digital stimulation. Rest, creating conditions for quality sleep. Workout routine. Physical fitness isn't just about your body, it's about your mind. Regular exercise improves cognitive function, emotional regulation, and stress resilience. You don't need to become a professional athlete, but you do need to move your body consistently. Learning routine. Champions are students for life. They're constantly learning, growing, and improving. Build learning into your daily routine through reading, podcasts, courses, or skill practice. Morning mind, night review. Let me share with you 2 specific practices that can transform your mental game: morning mind preparation and evening review. These are based on techniques used by elite performers across all fields. Morning mind preparation, 10 minutes. Minute 1 to 3, deep breathing to center yourself. Take 3 deep, conscious breaths, feel your body relaxing and your mind clearing. This shifts you from reactive mode to responsive mode. Minute 4 to 6, intention setting. Ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be today? Set an intention for how you want to show up, not just what you want to accomplish. Minute 7 to 9, visualization. Mentally rehearse yourself handling challenges with calm, confidence, and skill. Visualize yourself performing at your best in key situations you'll face. Minute 10, affirmation. State a powerful affirmation that reinforces your identity and capabilities. Something like, I am calm, focused, and capable of handling whatever comes my way. Evening review, 10 minutes. Minute 1 to 3, decompression. Take a few deep breaths and consciously transition from the activity of the day to reflection mode. Minute 4 to 6, assessment. Ask yourself 3 questions. What did I do well today? What did I learn today? How did I grow today? Minute 7 to 9, gratitude. Identify 3 things you're grateful for from the day. This trains your brain to notice positive aspects of your experience. Minute 10, preparation. Set your intention for tomorrow and identify the most important thing you want to accomplish. These practices might seem simple, but their power comes from consistency. When you do them every day, you're literally rewiring your brain for peak performance. Living with purpose, fighting with grace. The most successful fighters I know aren't just technically skilled. They fight with purpose. They know why they're in the ring, what they're fighting for, and what victory means beyond just winning the match. This sense of purpose transforms everything. It gives meaning to the difficult training sessions, strength during challenging moments, and direction when the path isn't clear. But here's what's beautiful about the fighter's approach to purpose. It's not just about personal achievement. The best fighters fight with grace. They respect their opponents, honor the sport, and use their platform to inspire others. This is the difference between fighting and warriorship. Fighting is about defeating opponents. Warriorship is about becoming the best version of yourself while helping others do the same. Living with purpose means clarity about your values. What principles guide your decisions? What do you stand for? What won't you compromise on? Connection to something larger. How does your personal growth serve others? How can your success inspire and elevate those around you? Commitment to excellence. Not perfection, but the continuous pursuit of your highest potential in all areas of life.
Contribution to others, using your strengths, skills, and resources to make a positive impact on the world. Fighting with grace means respect for the process, honoring the work, the challenges, and the journey, not just the outcomes. Humility and victory, recognizing that success is temporary and that there's always more to learn and improve. Resilience in defeat, using setbacks as opportunities for growth and comeback. Service to others, using your experiences, both positive and challenging, to help others on their own journeys. Let me share the story of Marcus, a business executive who transformed his approach to leadership using these principles. Marcus is technically competent, but struggled with team morale and personal satisfaction. He was achieving his professional goals, but felt empty and disconnected from his work. We worked together to help Marcus develop his fighter's daily code. Morning preparation. Marcus started each day with intention setting and visualization, priming himself to be the leader he wanted to be. Purpose clarity. Marcus reconnected with why he chose his career, not just for personal success, but to create value for customers and opportunities for his team. Grace in challenges. When facing difficult situations, Marcus learned to respond with curiosity and growth mindset rather than defensiveness or blame. Evening reflection. Marcus ended each day by acknowledging his team's contributions and identifying ways to serve them better. The transformation was remarkable.
Marcus's team engagement scores improved dramatically, his personal satisfaction increased, and his performance reviews were the best of his career. This is the power of living with purpose and fighting with grace. It's not just about achieving your goals, it's about becoming the person you're capable of being while helping others do the same. Remember, the Fighter's Daily Code isn't about perfection. It's about consistency, growth, and the daily choice to become a little bit better than you were yesterday. Every morning is a fresh start. Every challenge is an opportunity to practice your skills. Every interaction is a chance to demonstrate your values. You don't need a championship belt or a trophy to be a champion. You just need the commitment to live by the Fighter's Code every single day. Disciplined in your routines, purposeful in your actions, graceful in your approach, and dedicated to becoming the strongest, calmest, most unshakable version of yourself. The fight of life never ends, but with the right daily practices, you can make sure you're always ready for whatever comes your way. Conclusion: becoming your own champion. As we reach the end of our journey together, I want you to understand something profound. Everything you need to become mentally unshakable already exists within you. The techniques I've shared, the principles we've explored, the practices we've discussed, these aren't giving you new capabilities. They're revealing capabilities you already possess. You were born with the same basic mental equipment as every champion who has ever lived. The same brain that can learn, adapt, and grow. The same capacity for courage, resilience, and peak performance. The same ability to choose your response to any situation, no matter how challenging. The difference between living as a champion and living as everyone else isn't talent, luck, or circumstances. It's the daily choice to develop your mental abilities rather than neglect them, to face challenges rather than avoid them, to grow through adversity rather than be diminished by it. You don't need a ring to be a fighter. When most people think of fighters, they picture physical combat, competition, and external opponents. But the most important fights you'll ever have aren't in any ring or arena. They're in the privacy of your own mind, in the moments when no one is watching, in the daily choice between who you are and who you could become. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, you're fighting. Every time you stay calm under pressure, you're fighting. Every time you push through discomfort toward growth, you're fighting. Every time you respond with wisdom instead of reacting with emotion, you're fighting. Every time you get back up after being knocked down, you're fighting. This is the fight that matters most because it's the fight that determines all other outcomes in your life. Win this fight, and you win everything else. Lose this fight, and nothing else you win will satisfy you. The beautiful thing about this internal fight is that you can't lose unless you quit. Every round you go builds your strength. Every challenge you face expands your capabilities. Every adversity you overcome increases your resilience. You might not always win every external battle you face. You might not achieve every goal exactly as you planned, but if you consistently apply the principles we've discussed, if you daily choose the fighter's mindset over the victim's mindset, if you commit to growing through every experience life gives you, then you become undefeatable in the way that matters most. Every day is a fight. Win it. Let me share with you the most important insight from this entire book. Life doesn't give you what you deserve, it gives you what you fight for. And the quality of your fight determines the quality of your life. Every day presents you with opportunities to practice the fighter mentality. Every challenge is a chance to demonstrate your mental toughness. Every pressure situation is an opportunity to show your calm focus. Every setback is a platform for your comeback. The question isn't whether you'll face difficulties, you will. The question is whether you'll use those difficulties to become stronger or let them make you weaker. Champions aren't people who never face adversity. Champions are people who have learned to transform adversity into advantage, pressure into power, obstacles into opportunities. This transformation doesn't happen automatically. It requires conscious choice, daily practice, and unwavering commitment to growth. But when you make this commitment, when you decide to approach life with the fighter's mentality, everything changes. Problems become puzzles to solve rather than disasters to endure. Stress becomes energy to harness rather than burden to carry. Failure becomes information to use rather than identity to accept. Challenge becomes opportunity to grow rather than reason to quit. The quiet power of a sharp, calm mind. In our noisy, chaotic, and hyper-connected world, there is extraordinary power in developing a sharp, calm mind. While everyone around you is reactive, scattered, and emotionally driven, you can be responsive, focused, and strategically thinking. This isn't about becoming emotionless or disconnected. It's about developing what I call dynamic calm, the ability to feel everything while being controlled by nothing. You can be passionate about your goals while remaining detached from outcomes. You can care deeply about people while not being manipulated by their emotions. You can be fully engaged with life while maintaining inner peace. This dynamic calm is your secret weapon in a world full of chaos. When others are panicking, you're planning. When others are reacting, you're responding. When others are scattered, you're focused. When others are breaking under pressure, you're performing at your peak. The development of this mental state is perhaps the greatest gift you can give yourself and everyone in your life. When you're calm and centered, you make better decisions. When you're sharp and focused, you perform at higher levels. When you're unshakable, you inspire confidence in others. But remember, this isn't a destination you reach, it's a practice you maintain. Every day offers new opportunities to strengthen these mental muscles. Every challenge gives you a chance to practice these skills. Every interaction allows you to demonstrate these qualities. The fighter's mind isn't something you achieve once and then possess forever. It's something you choose repeatedly, develop consistently, and express authentically through your daily actions and responses. As you go forward from here, remember that you now possess a framework for mental excellence that has been tested by champions across all fields. You understand how your mind works under pressure. You know how to stay calm in chaos. You have tools for building focus, resilience, and discipline. But knowledge without application is worthless. The principles in this book only have power when you live them, practice them, and integrate them into your daily life. So here's my challenge to you. Don't let this be just another book you read. Let it be the beginning of a new way of being. Start small, but start today. Pick one principle that resonated with you and begin applying it immediately. Maybe it's the pause power technique. Maybe it's morning mind preparation training. Maybe it's stress inoculation training. Maybe it's simply changing your inner dialogue from critic to champion. Whatever you choose, commit to it completely. Practice it daily. Let it become part of who you are, not just something you do. Remember, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to master everything at once. You just need to be consistently moving in the direction of the person you want to become. The fighter's mind isn't about being tougher than everyone else. It's about being tougher than you used to be. It's not about never feeling fear. It's about acting courageously despite fear. It's not about avoiding all problems. It's about becoming the kind of person who solves problems effectively. Every champion started exactly where you are now, with potential that needed to be developed, skills that needed to be practiced, and a mind that needed to be trained. What made them champions wasn't their starting point. It was their commitment to the process of becoming. That process starts now. That choice is yours to make. That champion is yours to become. Welcome to the fight of your life. The fight to become everything you're capable of being. It's a fight you can win. A fight you will win if you fight it with the heart of a warrior and the mind of a champion. The bell has rung. The fight has begun. Now go show the world what you're made of.